Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talk with TQ. I'm so thrilled today to have two wonderful people on. I have Maria Berardi Ferretti, a new author, and I also have Vincent D'Aquino, who's also a multi-published author, and he also is the facilitator for the mahopac Writers Group. Maria, I met her by accident, and I was talking to someone about that today, that we were both looking for something at the same event. And in looking for our prospective people that we wanted to be in contact with, we ended up talking a little bit about Maria's book. And by the time we went to the other site, Maria had given me her book to read. So at that point, she turned me on to the idea of the mahopac Writers Group. And I said, boy, this would be a great interview with the two people. It's the new writer and the established writer and the leader of the group. And here we are all together. I'm going to start with Maria. Maria wrote a book that's called Who Said What? And it's a memoir. And it's basically about, I won't say basically, it's very much about her family in the Hudson Valley of New York, and also her late daughter. But there are stories within her story that are very, very, I'll say, endearing. And then she told me that she belonged to the mahopac Writers Group, and she talked about Vinny, can I call you Vinny?
Oh, please do.
Okay, Vinny D'Aquino, who actually leads the mahopac Writers Group. And I guess he facilitated the publishing of her book, and she ended up self-publishing, and now she's a published author. I made my decision to have them both on, and I want to talk with you, Maria. Tell me what your experience was like working with Vinny and other writers at the mahopac Writers Group.
It was really an adventure. I started out with one piece that I had written. I was a new author, and I had written the piece, and I had read it to some friends that I knew, to get their feedback. And I got a lot of positive feedback. And I was encouraged to go to some venues to read my piece. And I went to Hudson Valley Writers initially in Sleepy Hollow. And I met someone there named John McMullen. John was a very established member of the mahopac Writers Group, and he encouraged me to come to the writing group. And since I was a new writer, I didn't have a massive volume of work. So I came to the mahopac Writers Group with my piece, The Box, which is in the book, but it's not the first piece in the book. And I read the piece to the group, and everybody in the group was very welcoming and encouraging. And Vinny always said, we're a family. And so, I was encouraged to keep writing and keep coming back. And since I was a new writer, I didn't have a large volume of work. So every week I would work on something new. So between 2016 and 2019, coming to the group every week and having a piece to read every week, I amassed a volume of work. So that's basically how I got all of the short stories in the book. And then during the pandemic, I compiled it into a manuscript and edited it. And also there was another member of the group, Bob Lee, who was very instrumental in helping me format the book so that I could download it into Kindle Desk Publishing. Because really in the end, it just came to formatting, and there were some hurdles that I needed to overcome. And without Bob's help, I don't know if I really would have had the technical skills to be able to get it finally accomplished. But so then it was finally published earlier this year, around the end of the spring, the beginning of the summer.
Great. And imagine, I'm going to ask Vinny this. I imagine when an author or a writer, whether they're an aspiring writer, a new writer, or an established writer, I imagine that being involved in a group is good because, and feedback is usually encouraged in groups of writers. So tell me how you got involved in the mahopac writers group, and it seems that it was a really good place for Maria to be.
In 1997, I had started a new book. I basically was writing children's books, young adults. I was a school teacher for 35 years,
Oh, wow.
predominantly sixth grade. So that was kind of my field. And then I discovered a historical figure, Sybil Luddington, and I began writing history. Well, the mahopac Library asked me if I would come to the library to talk about the project I was involved in. And this was in 1997. So I went there and I talked about what I was about to do, that I was going to finish this book and that I was discovering amazing facts that no one knew about her, and the fact that her biography was incorrect. So after I did that, they said, hey, listen, we're trying to get a writers group together. Would you mind helping us kick it off? Well, I kicked it off for about 25 years. So I've been doing it every Thursday for over 20 years now. And it's amazing because the whole idea of the group is to bring writers together and give them courage and encouragement, and to help them find themselves and find the writer in them. So they came, and there were poets, there were novelists. Whatever they brought to the table was what we dealt with, and the whole idea was to comment on what they did. So basically, we gave them about 6 minutes, and after they finished reading, I would say comments, and the group would offer comments. And it usually is constructive comments. And there were times when we were able to say to the writer, I like that, but are you aware that your characters are Billy, Bobby, Donnie, Joey? Maybe you should get rid of some of those E's there at the end of some of those. Or I love your beginning, but it seems to slow down. So we offered suggestions of all kinds. And then the writer would take it home, sometimes come back and let us hear the revision. And then we'd comment on the revisions. Now, there started out to be about, I would say, maybe 20 writers. And Maria's right. We became a family, and we began to trust each other and understand that those comments were to make us a better us and help us to be all we could be as writers. So as we did with Maria, we would listen to what she had to say, made sure that when we liked it, she knew we did. And when we thought that there was a problem, we told her that too. And the criticism is gentle criticism. And it's to enable the reader, the writer, to do the best piece that he or she can do. We were about 20 some people. Over the years, we've come and gone. Amazingly, our group can boast that there are approximately 150 books that have been written either by members who came into the group, members who wrote their books in the group, or members who wrote books, published them after the group. So we've had a number of writers come and go, and wonderful work. I especially liked the kind of work that Maria did, because what Maria did is she went into her heart, she went into her memory, she went into her history, and she wrote about things that were valuable to her. So when we commented on her work, we were really commenting on her life and asking her to celebrate her life through her writing. And I was just thrilled at what she finally came out with. You know, as was true with many of the writers, they came saying, well, I don't know if I'm going to write a book, but I'll certainly try. And not only did she, but she wrote a very good book. And she wrote a book that meant something to not only her, but to the rest of us. Because when our writers achieve, we achieve. And we can celebrate that achievement. And that's what we're about.
I think it's beautiful. I think that so often when I consider literary arts art, when people get involved in the arts, and I think that artists, whether they're writers, visual artists, or performing artists, the writers tend to be hypercritical of themselves. If it's something that you haven't done, I think that it's beautiful to be involved in a group. But I want to ask you, what about people that have written something and they really need to just present the work to their writers? They are writers. They might not be famous writers, but they need to have someone to bounce it off of. Are there people like that in the group?
That's absolutely true. We become a sounding board. And it's very important because, we write things and we say, oh, that's beautiful. But it's nice to hear someone else say it or say, well, it is beautiful, but I equate it to a bunch of friends who get together, teenagers, in the driveway with a basketball, and they practice their shots, and they perfect their skills by bouncing the ball around to each other. Teamwork. That's what we are. We're a group of people with like interests who form a team to help you become the best you can be. And we laugh, we talk. In the days when we could actually see each other's faces in person, we ate potato chips together and popcorn and brought in cupcakes. And it was basically a get together, but a get together with a purpose, with a goal in mind. And that goal, of course, was to make each other the best people we could be, the best writers we could be. Now, with COVID, we went to Zoom, and no offense, but Zoom isn't my favorite. I'd rather have the people right there where I can see their faces every minute and talk with all of them. But Zoom has worked, and one of our writers who's very good with technology, John McMullen, helped us to work with Zoom every week so that we can bring as many people as we could. Now, that brought in a whole new element. We have people from Long Island. We even have a member from the state of Washington who joins. Yeah, so, we can reach out and with technology, get people from different walks of life and different demographics. So we continue every single week, every Thursday, but we also now have added face-to-face at a pizza parlor.
That's
and
great.
We get together every other week. We eat pizza, we eat soup, and we talk, and we share our work in person. So now we're kind of doing two. We're doing weekly, and we're doing every other week. And it works out well. And we have created lasting friendships. Age group, there is no age group. You can be 85, you can be 15. We've had high school students join us, even some with guitars, songwriters, kids who were trying to write music. There is no limit to the kind of writing you can do in the group. And Maria is a classic example of that. Her book is unusual. It isn't a typical biography or autobiography. It's written in an unusual sense. Is it right or wrong? It's both. It's right for the topic. It's not like everybody else's. Can you be different? Absolutely. We encourage that in writers. Can you be totally unusual? You can be anything you want to be. That's who we are. And we encourage you to be the writer you want to be and to take risks. If you've never written poetry, we encourage you to try. Or write a novel or newspaper articles, magazine articles. Doesn't matter. What you bring to the table is what we deal with. And that's what we're about.
I noticed in Maria's book that it reads a little bit like an anthology of short stories in a sense, but it kind of brings itself together. I'm going to talk, Maria, about one particular chapter that almost made me kind of cry a little bit when I read it. I read it recently again, and I'm reading through this about your neighbor, Stanley.
Oh, yeah, that was a really good story.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. And I like the fact that you used a term consistently throughout that chapter, outside friends. You were not inside friends, and how you met him. And it's interesting that when I was reading it, there was a reveal that you really didn't know something about him. Even though he was right next door and you always said hello to him whenever you saw him, he said hello to you. It was like the same kind of polite banter. There's no hostility. It was just regular, boring neighborly banter. Like, how are you doing? I'm doing okay. But he didn't know you and you did not know him. If without revealing anything that will give away the book, what did you find out about your neighbor Stanley?
He was a clergyman, and but I didn't know this. He did say that he volunteered at the hospital. So in hindsight, his background in counseling, I'm sure, was very helpful with that. And he was just a nice neighbor, and he was an older gentleman, and he was sitting outside. It was in the summer, but he looked like he was sort of like abandoned in a way. And what had happened was he had locked his keys in his car, and they were also the keys to his apartment. So he was just waiting for the locksmith. And so, I asked him if he wanted to come inside, but, he said he'd be okay, waiting outside. It was a nice summer evening. The days are long and the weather's nice. And, he just asked me politely, oh, how are you? And so I was going through a lot at the time. And usually when people asked me that, I would just say, oh, I'm okay. But so probably in his training as a clergyman, he kind of prompted me a little bit by saying, oh, you're just okay. And so, I told him that I was not having a good summer. And so we talked while he was sitting outside, basically on the curb where his car was parked, waiting for the locksmith. And then, we had a heartfelt conversation. And then Stanley and I never spoke of it again. But, when he would say, oh, how are you? And I'd say, okay, he knew what that meant. And then when it was the holidays, Stanley brought me a gift. So it was he was a Jewish rabbi, and he brought me a Christmas gift. So the name of the story was The Year I Received a Christmas Gift from the Rabbi. So even though, Stanley and I are of different faiths, we formed a bond. And, I was very appreciative of that. And obviously, Stanley was thinking of me by bringing me a gift. So yeah, that was a good story, and I got a lot of positive feedback on that one.
And the actual event must have been very heartwarming for you. But, that's, I think the cultural exchange was very touching, and it was apropos to what you were going through at the moment. And then I like the way you did the reveal within the chapter. It was like gradual. It wasn't like you knew right away. It was
Uh-huh.
kind of like you had preconceived notion in your mind. And I think Stanley might have been very intuitive.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure. He probably had a lot of, education and training and experience. And, maybe he sensed something by, prodding me a little more with my answer to my question. But it just goes to show that, people come into your lives and you might not know who they are. And for that moment, it's very monumental and makes a big impact and is really what you need at that time.
Yeah. And I want to also ask, Vinny, it seems that both of you have sort of a similar theme in your books about patriotism and the Italian American culture. It's sort of interwoven within your stories.
Yeah, and one of the things that we try to focus on is the fact that those special moments in your life are chapters. They're scenes. You take from your life moments that are important to you. Uh, I remember one student that I had, little sixth grader. I had just finished saying to them, if you can find a moment in your life that's really important to you, that's a great topic for a story or a book. And the little boy said to me, yeah, but what if my life is boring? How can I write something exciting if nothing exciting ever happened to me? And I said to him, listen, you don't always have to write about what is. You can write about what if. Take a real incident and build on it. And the way you felt about that certain incident, same way Maria felt about this man who stepped out of himself to do something good for her. Those are the moments we need to capture. And as a group, we listen to each other's stories and we learn and we hear and we say, hey, wait a minute. I like what you just did with that. I can do that. I had a similar incident in my life. I can build on that. So we learn from each other's writings. Not only do we help the writer, but the writer helps us to find out what we might be able to write about our own lives that could work for books and novels. So that's what it's all about. And, when I look back at my life, I'm just finishing a book now, and it's nearing an end. And in this book, the boy is a wrestler, and he has some interesting wrestling experiences. Well, I was a wrestling coach for 15 years, and I was a high school wrestler. So I used my wrestling experiences for the book. And then in the end of the book, I don't listen to this because you're not supposed to know the ending. In the end, in the end of the book, a very sad thing happens. Well, a girl, someone he cares about a great deal, loses her life. And one of my eighth grade students many years ago experienced a very similar experience. So I kind of married my wrestling experience with Mary's experience. I put the two together and created a whole fictional story. It's the what if, not what happened, but what could have happened, what may have happened. And if you look at your writing that way, there are a million possibilities for wonderful stories. And that's what we try to encourage with our writers. They have them find a story that works for them. Doesn't have to be 100% true. But if we fall back on who we are, we have unlimited material for writing.
It's interesting to me that what if, I love that. I don't think anyone's ever said that to me in a writing class. And I think that it's kind of like you write something that's fiction, that's basically not true, and you can tell the whole story. But when you write nonfiction, or maybe I have it backwards, when you write nonfiction, which is a true story, you can't tell the whole truth, but then if you switch it to fiction, change all the names, you can tell the whole truth.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just my thing. That's the way I look at it. That's my next book. It's the whole truth. I don't know, maybe that's a good title. I think this is wonderful.
Don't forget to bring that to the next writers group when you join us.
I will join you, as I can see that it would be good for any writer to be in this group because of the encouragement and the feedback. I'm going to close for the moment. This won't be the last time you guys are on my show. What I'd like to mention to the audience is that the mahopac Writers Group, you mentioned that you meet a couple of times a month. Am I correct?
We meet every single Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30 or 8:45.
Is it possible that the people listening could actually call you?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to give you my cell phone number, and they're welcome to call that number, and I'll give them the address that they can go to on a Thursday. My number is 845-206-7703. And I do have a website they can go to, and they can contact me through the website. And it's vtdaquino.com.
V like Victor, T like Thomas, Daquino, just like it sounds, but there's a C in there.
DACQUINO.com.
Right. And I tell everybody that's listening to us to please go there and check it out. Yep. Both of you have like extraordinary stories. I'll just mention that Vinny, you also facilitate other groups as well. And I just want to mention real quick, your story is going to be in Smithsonian Magazine.
Right. It already has.
Okay.
Yep. So it's been in there. It's been in the Times Union.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the website, it's all there.
Yeah, go to the website and you get the goods on Vinny. And Maria, where can one buy your book, purchase your book online?
It's on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon. It's called Who Said What. You have to put in my full name, Maria Berardi, and it will come up, and it's available on Amazon. If you're in the local Westchester area, there are a few bookstores that have it. The Curio Room in Mount Kisco, By the Dam Books, it's called, in Croton, at the Black Cow Coffee House.
Oh, yeah.
And Books by Humanity in Ossining.
Okay.
I'm also originally from Pennsylvania, and it's in a bookstore at the Steamtown Mall in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Library Express. It's also in the Westchester County Library System and the Scranton Public Library System. And I have copies on my own if someone would like to buy it directly from me or else through Kindle.
Good way to get an autographed copy.
Okay, so there we have it. And thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us, Tony. And thank you for what you do with these shows.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm looking forward to having you back. Thank you, audience, for coming to see another episode of Talk with TQ and Energy Stoners Cafe. And I'll see you next time where I'll bring you the most interesting people I can find on the planet. Bye-bye.